What if retirement wasn't about slowing down, but about checking in, like to a permanent all-inclusive resort? Well, today we're going to dive into the story of a company that looked at the entire senior living industry and said, yeah, we can do that, and then built it from the ground up.
I mean, really think about that for a second. No mortgage, no surprise utility bills. Forget about cooking, forget about cleaning. You get all the perks of a luxury vacation, but it's your home. That's a pretty powerful idea, isn't it?
And that powerful idea, well, it became the exact blueprint for a company called Resort Lifestyle Communities, or RLC. But this isn't just some boring real estate story. Nope. This is about a family that took a really disruptive idea from the construction world and used it to completely change one of the biggest, most personal decisions anyone ever has to make. Okay, so to really get why RLC is such a big deal, we've got to look at what they were up against. What was the normal way of doing things in retirement living before they came along?
And right here, this is where you see the huge difference in how they thought about money. The old, traditional way, it usually meant you had to come up with this massive buy-in fee. We're talking 6 figures. So you basically had to sell your family home, liquidate all your assets just to get your foot in the door. RLC, they completely flipped the script. They went with a simple, flexible, month-to-month rental. No giant buy-in, no getting locked into a long-term contract.
And that led them to their big promise, what they call worry-free living. They figured out that the constant stress of owning a home, the leaky faucet, mowing the lawn, paying property taxes, it's a massive headache, especially for seniors. So by bundling everything into one single monthly payment, they weren't just selling a place to live. They were literally taking a lifetime of stress right off your shoulders. But to really understand the DNA of this company, we need to rewind way back, before a single retirement community was even a sketch on a napkin. We've got to go back to their roots in the rough and tumble world of construction. So the whole story really kicks off with a guy named John Cameron back in 1973. He builds this really successful construction company out in Utah. But here's the thing, he wasn't just a builder, he was a disruptor. Now, let's fast forward to the year 2000. You've got that same family taking those same core ideas and dropping them into a totally different industry. And at the absolute heart of it all was something called the merit shop philosophy. See, in a world of closed-off, union-dominated bidding, John Cameron was all about open competition. His whole belief was, hey, the best company for the job should get the job, period. It was this kind of anti-establishment, super efficient way of thinking, and that's the exact same energy they brought to the old-fashioned world of senior living.
Every great company story has that one moment, that fork in the road where it all could have just ended. For RLC, that moment wasn't a metaphor. It was very, very real. And it involved a massive, devastating fire. This right here is Savannah Pines. This was the prototype, the very first one. It was the first time their whole resort living idea became a real place. It had it all, a huge 150-seat theater, a concierge desk, that all-inclusive model. The dream was finally real. And then, disaster. Just as they were hitting their stride, the absolute worst-case scenario unfolds. A huge fire just rips through the brand-new community. Now, for a new company, this is usually a death sentence. It means bankruptcy, collapse. Their entire dream was literally going up in smoke. But it didn't end them. In fact, you could say it's what made them who they are. The company rebuilt. They stood by their residents. This trial by fire, and I mean not literally, it became a legend within the company. It was this powerful, true story they could tell people as proof that, hey, when we make a commitment, we do not back down. All right, so we've seen their mindset and we've seen how tough they are. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's break down the actual business model. What's the secret sauce that makes this whole resort lifestyle thing actually work? It really boils down to 3 main pillars, and each one of these was a very deliberate choice, designed to make them stand out and to back up that worry-free promise. So let's take a look at them one by one. First up, financial freedom. And this is absolutely crucial because there's no massive buy-in. The residents get to keep control of their own money, their nest egg. They're not forced to sink their life savings into a property. Instead, they're just paying for service month by month. That kind of flexibility is a huge deal for today's seniors who want to stay independent. Okay, number 2, and this is something you just don't see anywhere else, the live-in managers. So instead of some corporate director who punches out at 5 p.m.,
RLC actually hires couples to live right there in the building 24/7. Like the Carters say, they're not just staff, they're your neighbors. So if there's a blizzard at 2 in the morning or a resident has an emergency, the people in charge are literally just down the hall. It completely changes the dynamic from a corporate job to a real personal relationship.
And that third pillar, it's all about total control. And this comes straight from the family's construction DNA. See, they have a sister company, Cameron General Contractors, that handles everything from A to Z, finding the land, designing the building, construction, all of it. Then, once it's built, RLC steps in to run the place. This vertical integration, it's genius. It gives them incredible control over the quality, the cost, and how fast they can get things done.
So, with this killer model locked in, the company was basically a rocket ship ready for takeoff. They were primed for huge growth, and boy did they grow, expanding way beyond their roots in the Midwest. Just think about it. They went from that one single community in Lincoln, Nebraska, the one that literally rose from the ashes, to this. Over 60 communities spread all across the United States. I mean, that is just a staggering amount of growth, and it's all powered by that super efficient model. And we're not just talking about adding more locations in one area. They've built a true national footprint. From their home base in Nebraska, they've pushed into huge retirement markets like Florida, the super competitive Carolinas, and even places that are notoriously tough to build in, like Connecticut. Every time they open a new place, it just proves that their model works. But of course, growing that fast is never easy. When you're operating in dozens of different states, you have to deal with a crazy patchwork of different labor laws. And yeah, the company has faced some legal challenges over things like wages and hours. It's kind of the inevitable growing pains you get when you go from a small company to a national powerhouse. But honestly, those challenges are tiny compared to the opportunity in front of them. You've heard the saying, demographics are destiny, right? Well, right now, we are in the middle of what's called peak 65. More Americans are turning 65 than ever before in history. This silver tsunami, as they call it, is just a massive tailwind pushing the entire senior living industry forward, especially for a company like RLC. And look, at the end of the day, none of this matters if the people living there aren't happy. But the numbers, they really speak for themselves. A 4.8-star average rating from over 1,700 reviews, that's incredible. It shows that even with all the challenges of growing so fast, that core promise of a resort lifestyle is actually being delivered. People love it. So when you look at the whole story of RLC, a company built on a rebellious idea, forged in a literal fire, and then scaled across the entire country, it makes you ask a much bigger question. Is this the future of aging in America? Are we moving away from those complicated, expensive buy-ins and towards something that feels more like hospitality, more flexible? It's a really compelling vision, and it's one an entire generation is making a decision on right now.